Paralympic medalist, orthopaedic surgeon and now trainee astronaut John McFall, and before him, Paralympic champion Ntando Mahlangu. Two of our guests in Series 4 of On the Podium, which you can listen to now on BBC Sound or from wherever you get your podcasts. Series 5 debuts on Sports World next weekend, and with Wimbledon just around the corner, our first guest is the 2016 Olympic singles champion Monica Puig. In Rio, she won Puerto Rico's first Olympic gold medal.
When I played for Puerto Rico, there was something very special about it. I feel very strongly for Puerto Rico every time. You know, it doesn't matter how many times I go to the island. I always tear up when I'm landing and I always tear up when I'm leaving.
Monica Puig on the podium with myself, Ed Harry and Eliza Skinner. That's in Sports World next weekend. Join us then.
Looking forward to listening to that. Thank you to Eliza and Ed for On the Podium. We've live commentary from two continental football tournaments coming up in July here on Sports World, with the Women's Euros in Switzerland and the Women's Africa Cup of Nations.
The best footballing talent in Africa heads to Morocco in July for the 15th Women's Africa Cup of Nations. 12 teams, 26 matches across 6 venues, but only one winner. Will it be a record-extending 10th title for the Super Falcons of Nigeria?
History for Nigeria! 9 times champions!
Can the hosts better their runners-up place from 2 years ago? Or can South Africa defend their maiden title?
That is it. That is the final whistle. South Africa, after 5 attempts, have finally claimed glory in the Women's Africa Cup of Nations final. They achieve immortality as they claim their first title in the WAFCON.
The CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations. Follow the action right here with live commentary of key matches from the BBC World Service.
You're certainly going to want to listen to Sports World in the coming weeks. It's going to be a terrific ride, I'm sure. Still to come on the programme, we'll be back at Headingley for the latest on that opening test between England and India. India batting in their second innings after tea. We'll also bring you the latest edition of the warm-up track to come after the news, and we'll have reaction from the men's final at Queen's and bring you the latest on the Women's US PGA Championship. So don't go anywhere. Plenty more to come in the final 2 hours of Sports World right here on the BBC World Service. But let's get the latest BBC news. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us.
I'm Debbie Russ with the BBC News. Hello. The US Defense Secretary has insisted that the bombing of Iran's nuclear program was not designed to bring about regime change in Tehran. Pete Hegseth said the mission was a precise military one, which did not target Iranian troops or civilians. At a briefing, giving the Pentagon's first assessment of the strikes, he described them as an overwhelming success.
This is a plan that took months and weeks of positioning and preparation so that we could be ready when the President of the United States called. It took a great deal of precision, it involved misdirection, and the highest of operational security. Our B-2s went in and out and back without the world knowing at all.
14 huge bunker-busting bombs were among the munitions used, as well as cruise missiles fired from a submarine. The most senior officer in the US military, General Daniel Kane, explained that the effects of the raid were still being examined.
In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation. I know that battle damage is of great interest. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction.
Iran's foreign minister has accused President Trump of betraying the American people, as well as Iran, by bombing its nuclear facilities. Speaking in Istanbul, Abbas Araghchi said the United States had crossed a big red line. He described Iran as committed to diplomacy, but said it had the right to defend itself.
It is an outrageous, grave, and unprecedented violation of the fundamental principles of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression.
Mr. Arakchi said he would travel to Moscow soon to consult President Putin. Israel is continuing its own strikes against targets in Iran. Iranian state media is reporting a major blast in the southwestern province of Bushehr, home to Iran's only nuclear power plant. The International Atomic Energy Agency has previously warned that a strike on the Bushehr plant could trigger a very high release of radioactivity. The UN chief Antonio Guterres has described the US military action as a direct threat to international peace and security, warning of catastrophic consequences. It's been announced that the UN Security Council will hold an emergency session later on Sunday. Russia and China have both condemned the attack on Iran. There's also been strong reaction from around the Middle East. World News from the BBC. The Palestinian Health Ministry says at least 54 people have been killed in Gaza over the last 24 hours. Local media say at least 6 were killed on Sunday near an aid distribution centre in the southern city of Rafah. One of Asia's largest airlines, Air India, says it's temporarily cutting the number of scheduled flights using its smaller, narrow-bodied aircraft by 5%. The cuts will affect its domestic and short-haul international flights. On Thursday, the airline announced it was reducing the number of international flights using its wide-bodied planes by 15% to allow for safety inspections. One of the largest cultural festivals in France has seen 145 women complain of being jabbed with syringes. Some reported feeling unwell and were taken to hospital for tests, as our Europe regional editor Paul Moss reports.
It's a countrywide public celebration. France's annual Fête de la Musique sees large crowds wandering the streets of towns and cities as they visit one music venue after another. There had been warnings of trouble this year, posts on social media explicitly calling for attacks on women. What police are now trying to discover is whether syringes were used to inject victims with drugs. They're also investigating a number of other violent incidents, including one in Paris which saw a teenager stabbed. A dozen suspects have so far been arrested.
2 South African oil engineers who'd been in jail for more than 2 years in Equatorial Guinea on drugs charges have been reunited at home with their families. Fred Potgieter and Peter Huxon were pardoned. Their families said the charges were trumped up. The 2 men were arrested in 2023 after a South African court ordered the seizure of a yacht owned by the son of the president of Equatorial Guinea. They were found guilty of drug trafficking. And that's the latest world news from the BBC.
You're listening to Sports World with me, Dalith Lloyd. Great to have you with us wherever you're listening around the world. Let's check in at Headingley, where India have started their second innings on day 3 of the first test against England. Henry Moran can update us again.
Where India 49-4-1, the lead is 55. The one wicket that has fallen, one of 3 centurions from India's first innings. Yashasvi Jaiswal caught behind off the bowling of Bryden Cast for just 4. But good partnership this between KL Rahul, who's shown great patience mixed with some really elegant strokes through the offside, alongside Sai Sudarsan, who on debut got a duck in the first innings but is on to 16 from 25 balls, and the India lead 55 runs as the wind howls. We expect the rain to start in the next 10-15 minutes or so. England will have wanted maybe 2 or 3 wickets by this point. They've got just the one, but it remains a compelling test match this. Earlier on today we saw England finish their innings just 6 runs behind India's first innings total. England were all out for 465 in response to 471.
What kind of score, Henry, do you think England will be looking at to restrict India to, if they're to have a realistic chance of pushing for victory, do you think?
Well, we remember in a game at Edgbaston a couple of years ago when it was really the height of the Bazball revolution. England chased down north of 300 against an India side. But I think anything in that region will be a real challenge. And as I say, this game remains fascinatingly poised. I think one element of the match that we are going to be keeping a very close eye on is what we see now as Shoaib Bashir, the England spinner, comes on to bowl. We saw Ravindra Jadeja looking very threatening for India. If Bashir can get a bit of turn and bounce from this surface, we really will begin to factor the Jadeja element into what potential total England might be able to chase down in the final innings of this match. But first of all, England have got to concentrate on getting through India's batting. It is, as I say, absolutely fascinatingly poised, this, and it's what it's all about. Judesha Pujara on Test Match special commentary for the BBC a moment ago said it could go any way, and this is proper Test Match cricket. It really is.
This is what we want. The neutrals want this anyway. Henry, thank you. We'll be back with you a little bit later on Sports World. Henry Moran at Headingley, tantalisingly poised towards the end of the third day of that opening test between England and India. What a series we could be in for this summer. Now, our athletics podcast, The Warm-Up Track, is back for a new season as we count down to the World Championships in Tokyo in September. Ed Harry and Adi Adedoyin will take you behind the scenes at the Diamond League meetings, bringing together the sport's biggest names. Today, we're in the company of a World and Commonwealth medalist.
I think it's tradition that I almost have to play a game of javelin bingo here, and I have to use the phrase, is it like a golf swing?
I don't play that much.
I don't play golf either, so I don't know.
Now they get first time then. Can anyone come back at her? The gap is growing and growing and growing.
And coming round the final corner now.
Off the final barrier. She has absolutely smashed it.
He crosses the line.
And it's Olympic gold. What a moment.
It's a new world indoor record.
From the BBC World Service, this is the warm-up track.
This is the warm-up track. I'm Adi Adedoyin. Alongside me is Ed Harry. We're building towards this summer's World Championships in Tokyo. Ed, it's got me thinking about who the most successful athlete is in World Championship history. And I've been racking my brains because there are a few people who are in contention.
All I can tell you is the statistics, because there's a lot of things to weigh up here, but statistically, Alison Felix is the most decorated track and field athlete in the history of the World Championships. 20 World Championship medals, 3 golds in the 200 metres, 1 gold in the 400 metres, and all those relay wins, 4x1, 4x4, and right at the end of her World Championship career, mixed 4x4 as well. And the versatility, and look, there are some silvers in there are some bronzes in there are days it didn't quite work out, but a fantastic technician and a fantastic competitor. She's top of the list, and then I don't know if I have to step back and wash my hands of this debate, because it's a very, very difficult thing to try and nail down.
Yeah, because you've got Usain Bolt.
Him.
Yes. Yeah, him. Yeah, 14 medals, 11 golds. I mean, do we look at this as part the number of individual medals that's an athlete won, or do we count relays, for example? So if you're, say, Mo Farah, who did very well in the 5s and the 10s, 6 golds, 2 silvers, but he doesn't get a chance to do a relay, you know. And what about in terms of impact on the whole? When you take someone like Carl Lewis, he'll be in that list of athletes who won lots of medals, but when he was competing, it was 4 years for every world champion, wasn't it?
Between the two, yeah.
Between the two,
So what, in 83, 100 metres long jump and 4x1 gold. The next year at the Olympics, having established that base, he wins all 4 golds that he could win, and he emulates Jesse Owens. But you're right, there isn't a World Championships in 1985. He had to wait till 1987 because they were only every 4 years. And when we got to 87 in Rome, he won that triple gold again, 100 metres long jump and the 4x1.
Yeah, and then the other aspect of all this, just even complicated more, is do you look at kind of impact? Like, you know, you think of someone like in boxing, Muhammad Ali, generational talent, where whether you like boxing or not, you know who this athlete is. Do you look at Carl Lewis? Do you look at Usain Bolt?
Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price
in terms of a generational talent? Well, they all aren't they, Alison Felix, but how do we measure this in terms of who's the most successful?
Yeah, and I know we've said before during the season of the podcast, you've made the point that everything Usain Bolt did at the 2009 Worlds, well, he struck gold again in 2015 when, you know, the doctors said that he should not be out there doing that, but he found it again. He found it when he needed it most. So, yeah, but yeah, spare a thought for those athletes who are unable to compete in relays. But if Alison Felix was sat here, and I would love to make a podcast with Alison Felix one day, I think she would make the point that I guess you don't just win the 4x1s and then go into the 4x4 and win that the next day. And then actually there's a new thing called the mixed 4x4. I'm going to jump in a team there and I'm going to win that as well. And I'm going to stick through these quartets as all the names and faces around me change and get younger. I'm still worth my place, and I've stood on the top of another podium.
Well, I'm going to throw a towel in because it's very hard to pick. These are all great athletes. Well, let's welcome another one to the warm-up track. That's Mackenzie Little, World and Commonwealth medalist in the women's javelin, who's going to be going for gold at the Tokyo Games this summer. welcome to the warm-up track.
Thank you for having me.
I've often heard you referred to as Dr. Javelin because you have this parallel career. So we'll talk about track and field in a moment, but let's start with medicine. When did you first decide that that's a path I wanted to follow?
Always. I can't think of a time where I wanted to do something else. And I guess it's the old story. I really liked the sciences and then thought being a doctor would be a good thing, and I actually really didn't think about anything else. And I think medicine was much more of a plan for the future than athletics or javelin or any sport was when I was younger. So it's been there since the beginning.
We've got quite used to seeing, and I think obviously it's an absolute gift for journalists, they'll say Mackenzie Little arrived at the meet after a run of 12-hour shifts, and Mackenzie Little's got to get back on the plane to go straight back for another run of shifts. Where are you at the moment in terms of that medical career? You've been qualifying as a doctor. Have you qualified, and where are you on that road?
Yeah, I'm a second-year doctor, so I'm a resident doctor in Australia. And in Australia, you do several rotations in the first couple of years before specialising, and so I'm currently doing renal medicine in the dialysis unit at the moment, but moving on to neurosurgery for world champs, and then I guess my grand plan for the future is head and neck surgery. ENT is the plan for me. So that's where I'm at, and it's great. It's great. It's going well.
We'll talk about how you balance both careers in a moment, but what about javelin? When did you first pick one up and decide, I quite like that?
So it was in year 7, first year of high school in Australia, and it was, I was an athletics person. I'd done a bit when I was younger, little athletics, and I was a hurdler at the time. My mum was a hurdler, and it was just a rainy morning at hurdles training when it was called off, and the hurdlers can be a bit precious perhaps, but the javelin was still on, and so just went over to the javelin training where a friend's sister was, and gave it a go, and the coach said, oh yeah, you should come back, and I thought, why not? And that was it. So I'd had some experience overhead throws in water polo and softball, so I was coordinated enough to impress her on the first go. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned hurdles, 400 hurdles, but also heptathlon, and obviously javelin's an element of that. Were you still trying to do several different disciplines, or did you get it from sort of year 7 onwards? No, this is it now.
I mean, I was still doing everything, but it's once you start kind of excelling and seeing good improvement, it becomes that intoxicating. You really like doing it. So I was certainly multi-sport, and then within athletics doing a lot through high school. But I don't know if I'd proclaim myself as a true heptathlete, for example. I only ever did one. But gosh, I'd love to do that, and I think it's really impressive. And there's actually a lot of javelin throwers that have done heptathlons, and I thought about doing a heptathlon just to try and get the world best in the javelin, which would be fun at some point. But don't let anyone else get the idea before me.
It's okay, no one's listening.
yeah.
And I guess the world of javelin and medicine kind of came together when you went to university. You went to Stanford in the United States. How did that come about?
So I actually did not have many intentions of going to the US or anything else for college. The thought was just to go to undergraduate medicine in Australia, and that was kind of always the plan. But I had, this kind of person in high school who was an elite sports coordinator who went over to the US, mentioned some athletes at some colleges, and it wasn't really commonplace for Australians to go to the US yet at that point. There were a few, but anyway, I was mentioned at Stanford, and the coach there at the time sent an email saying, have you ever considered applying? And I kind of said, not really, but look, I'm actually going on a family holiday to the US, which was true, in 6 months or so, and we'll stop by Stanford, we'll just see what's the harm. And then went and thought, you know what, maybe just give it a go. I'll just do it for 1 year, as I deferred my undergraduate medical degree in Australia. Just thought I'd give it a go for 1 year. But obviously, I mean, that environment of college I can talk about a lot is so exciting and overwhelming, and everyone's doing kind of this beautiful mix of academics and athletics, and I think the amount of money and the amount of professionalism in the athletics in college is really different to anything I'd seen before. So I had such a good time. And 2 weeks before that second year started, I still thought I wasn't going to go back, but I just kind of broke down with my parents and said, I need to buy a flight, I need to go back, I need to keep going. So that was it. And then, that Stanford experience was unforgettable, and I just, so lucky to have had that.
When you sat down a few minutes ago to record with us, you said, you've done my old college roommate Valerie Allman on this podcast. We had no idea.
I know. Yes. Well, actually, my time at Stanford was blessed in a number of reasons, but we had a really strong cohort of athletes coming through. So I was lucky enough to live with Val, and just, she was just one of the most beautiful friends throughout that time. And, I'm so impressed with her. She's had such a wonderful career, and she deserves it. We have some really good times together and some really funny photos from college days together. I love seeing her at Diamond Leagues and getting to catch up, in everywhere from China to wherever else we are in Europe. It's really kind of wonderful. And then actually there's this other strong group of kind of Elise Cranny and Grant Fisher, who are all with us in the same period of time, and Sean McGordy, and like a lot of the Americans for some reason just had this really concentration of talent in those couple of years. And so it's really nice to be on the circuit and see college friends a lot.
How did you actually balance being an athlete and going through an academic career as medicine is? Because my perception of if you are a college athlete is that's quite intense. And my sister-in-law is a surgeon or training in Australia, and I know when she was in the UK, that was quite intense.
Yes. In college, they hold your hand through it, and they do have a good system. And in college, I feel like a lot of people do a good balance. And then I guess people say that that's going to be really hard to balance. And then, I went to med school, and people said that would also be hard to balance. And it is. But, at any point, if it was too hard, you can't... It didn't make sense to me to complain about it and say this is really hard, because at any point I had the option to stop and only pick one of them, and I just was not willing to make that choice. I felt that I'd had periods in my life that had convinced me that the balance was best for my competition. So kind of after high school, before I went to college, I had this period with some health issues. I had a couple of surgeries, so I didn't have the athletic part of my life, and then academically kind of suffered and emotionally suffered. And then after college, before that kind of 6-month period before med school, I went to Europe and did a European season. I was a full-time athlete for a little bit and was rubbish, absolutely rubbish. I had these competitions. My first ever competition, Rovereto, Italy. And I remember tripping over in the warm-up in front of everyone in the stadium and throwing, a season's worst and just not doing my best. And, I think, I've just kind of felt that the best thing for me is this balance. And I have, when I'm happy and kind of feel fulfilled in lots of aspects of my life, that's when I do compete best. So that's what I'm working with. And, I think there's definitely compromises that I have to make, and at the moment I'm willing to make those, and I do think it's kind of best me overall. But we'll see. I do take it year by year, because it, as you say, especially some of the specialist surgical training coming up, it's just going to be really difficult. It's already hard with training. I'm regularly late to my 6 to 8 p.m. training sessions on weeknights because of work, and that's just what has to happen. My coach is very flexible, to his credit, and is really good at working with when I just come to training exhausted or I just miss a session. We're good at working with that, and that's it. We just kind of keep moving forward.
How refreshing is that? Because I guess there would have been an era not too long ago, not just in track and field, but in most sports, where somebody at a coaching level would say, or somebody at the academic level would say, no, you must choose. You must be a doctor, or you are going to be an athlete. So either put the medicine over there until you finish your career, or vice versa. But from what you've said, it just sounds like people have always left that up to you.
I think so. I've been extremely lucky that I haven't been forced into a decision so far. There've certainly been people who have suggested that, medicine will always be there, focus on athletics while you can. And I think there's a point there. But, I think for me, and I've thought about this a lot, I've done some sports psychology work, and I do think that my performance is enhanced by this kind of grounded understanding that this performance does not define me and this would be icing on the cake. But I've already got so much out of the training and this lifestyle and all the opportunities afforded to me by athletics. It's so wonderful. And so that has been the kind of zone where I seem to succeed in the past, rather than, I've put 110,000% on the line and it all comes down to this. That kind of hasn't been the thing that drives me or helps me in the competition. But I mean, I think people are really understanding now that different training methods and physiques really can lead to good outcomes. But I think, there are different mental approaches that can lead to good outcomes too. But look, you never know. And so maybe I would throw 80 metres if I focused on the javelin. I don't think so. But you just don't know. So you just got to roll through life with what happens. That's what I'm doing now.
And as far as your collegiate title is concerned, you weren't in the US, you won titles in 2018 and 2019. As an environment, how important was that in terms of developing you as an athlete?
It was good. I think, so the coaching is really different in the US. I remember going over to the US and being told that they will overtrain you and they'll do too much gym work and they'll focus too much on the strength and you'll just crumble in that environment. And I think there's interesting discussions and it's obviously very coach dependent. I think the US does have the depth such that they can put athletes through the ringer and the good ones will pop out. Whereas in Australia, perhaps because of just maybe a slightly smaller talent pool, we do need to bubble wrap our athletes a bit more and personalise the training a bit more. Maybe that's where that stereotype came from. But I had 3 coaches while in the US for the 4 years, so I did get to see a few different training styles and I learnt a lot from each of them. And I think probably most pivotally those 2 years with Coach Zion in the middle there is where I saw the most improvement quickly. And I think I still use a lot of those training principles of quality over quantity kind of thing, and not doing any bench at all, and certain things that stand me well now. But you do just have to take away little bits from everyone that you come across, and I think I've tried to do that.
You mentioned a few moments ago about you've got a 6 to 8 practice in the evening back home when you're working. When you're in Australia, what does a kind of a week look like in terms of when you're in hospital or being a doctor, and then when you're doing your training around that? Yeah, okay. So the Monday to Friday is generally kind of 7 a.m. and then this is where, at the moment actually on dialysis, I'm generally getting out by 5 p.m. Previous terms, on the busy terms, and I suspect on neurosurge coming up, you'd rarely leave before 6 p.m. perhaps. And so, then I'll just, in the morning I've packed my bags and I've packed all my snacks for the day, and then I'll just get to training as fast as I can, get training done, and then head home. And, as part of the CV building for surgery, you certainly need to do exams and research and things, so I try and squeeze them in the evening and then get as much sleep as I possibly can. Could get more sleep, could get more recovery time in, but that's the way it is. So that's the Monday to Friday, and then Saturday morning, it's so relaxing. Get to have a full 2-hour training session. It's beautiful. From in the middle of the day, kind of 11 to 1, and then Sundays off. So that's a general week. Competition season, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Is this your holiday? I mean, as in, are you taking a holiday from work to come here? Yes, I get much more sleep on these whirlwind weekend trips to Europe than I would on a regular week or weekend. It's brilliant, and I feel like I do come to these competitions and I do go out of my way to see things and make it a holiday and a trip, because I am using up my very minimal annual leave for these days that I take off. So got to make it worth it. Yeah.
And in terms of competition, you set personal best at 3 majors. That's the Olympics, the Worlds and the Commonwealths. Yeah. How much was that down to an improvement in technique? The Commonwealths, you got silver. How much was that down to an improvement in technique? And how much was that down to you just feeling more comfortable in that environment? Because it's high pressure.
It's high pressure. That's true. I think I'd spent a few years with my current coach, Angus McIntyre, and we certainly had made some good technical changes and advancements. I'd just matured and become a little bit stronger and fitter, and I think we had a good technical model we're working on. I think definitely I feel more relaxed going into competitions now. I remember actually being in college, for example, and being so anxious, and the performance anxiety was such that I actually forgot which foot I started with at the top of the runway. And there have been moments when the anxiety really can completely overtake you. And I've worked with a sports psychologist back then in college and have strategies to deal with it. But I also just think kind of feeling comfortable in my own skin, being confident in the way that I approach athletics and things has helped. But yeah, so I certainly don't get as nervous for Diamond Leagues as I used to. But, you know, there's a fine balance because I want to be a bit nervous because that's the spicy competition energy that differentiates a comp from training. And I'm the kind of person who throws much further in competition than at training. So, you know, that's how I like to think about it.
And I don't know whether it's dispelling a myth, but after those, like I said, PBs across those seasons and those events, Commonwealth silver, and then you go on and you get a World Championship bronze last time at the Worlds, last time out in Budapest. Do you then build in time to celebrate and reflect on those achievements? Or is it really what you sort of read on all of the journalists saying, no, she had to go straight back? Do you just, I don't know, smell the roses a little bit is what I'm getting at?
Well, in Budapest, I did have to delay my flight to make the medal ceremony. So I don't know what that says, but I think, I mean, a lot of athletes will describe certainly post-Olympic blues, but there's post-competition blues when you come from this immense kind of hype and hyper-focus on you and all the attention on you and kind of every part of your life you justify because you're working up to a big competition. So every meal you eat, you'll spend a little bit extra to get exactly what you want, and you might pay for an upgrade on the flight so you're more comfortable. Everything's so focused on it, and suddenly life loses all meaning and the floor can fall out from underneath you. So actually to fly back immediately into a night shift where, you know, that patient couldn't care less where you were yesterday actually is very grounding and kind of, I do think keeps me emotionally more level. And yeah, particularly after, you know, a bad competition, when I was really disappointed after Paris Olympics, I mean, that saved me because I would have been just lost, I think. So, like, even with the highs, it's fabulous. And I go back to work and all of my co-workers are going, wow, this is amazing. But, you know, so the good times and the bad times, it's so good to have that to come back to. But even then, as I say, in the bad times, I'll come back and people will go, oh my God, you went to the Olympics. And it does make you feel better, despite the fact maybe I wanted a medal and maybe it was the most like crushing feeling I could feel. The person goes, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. And, you know, it's nice. It's nice to hear that too.
Yeah. What is the most surreal one of those that you've had where, you know, like sometimes you do something like you feel like you're floating and then you get back and it's like, oh, I'm back to reality.
Yeah, you got to come back down. I mean, my first Olympics in Tokyo was pretty special. You know, I just snuck into the rankings, barely made it, you know, found out a few weeks before that I was going, and then that complete whirlwind of COVID, and then kind of threw a personal best in qualifying and made the final and came 8th. That was just unreal. I think I was a late bloomer to even the prospect of going to the Olympics, and I kind of had been, as I said, a slightly different mentality. The example would be the wonderful high jumper Eleanor Patterson. We were roommates in 2013 at the Donetsk World Youth Championships, and we both won gold medals there. And I remember her telling me that in her bedroom she had a little piece of tape that was the high jump world record, and that she was really, really focused, and that kind of was her mindset. And I remember thinking, oh, like, am I doing this wrong? I haven't thought about, I don't even know what the javelin world record is actually. And I think that, yeah, there's just so many different ways to approach it. And then when I kind of went to the Olympics and thought, oh, this is just the coolest thing ever, and then actually did well, it kind of probably switched me into this mindset of that you could just be there and you can kind of do it your way, and you might just beat everyone else, maybe, you know, like you never know. And I think I just got a lot of confidence. I saw that the people I'd been seeing on TV, and that was my first major championship, that Olympics, they're not kind of robot superhuman people that perform all the time, and if I just kind of do my thing, you can do pretty well. So, you know, like, and now especially as someone who has done a bit better and perhaps have, you know, I've got some expectations on myself. I know how hard it is to meet those expectations now. But yeah, I think that was a bit of a turning point where I really took myself more seriously.
Did it help? It was a very strange Olympics, and we were there, and no crowd and all of the COVID protocols. Did it kind of help you that, as far as you were concerned, well, this is the Olympics, you didn't have another Olympics to compare it to?
Probably, I think so, because I certainly wasn't disappointed. Like, it was brilliant. It was the coolest thing I'd ever gone to. So I think that was probably good. But then I was glad to have a non-COVID Olympics after as well, to get to experience some of the things that people talked about the village, and some of the, I mean, to see the hype in the stadium, to be there when a French athlete was announced, and you just are shook by this screaming crowd. It's pretty unreal. So yeah, it was, I think, a perfect order. A COVID Olympics and then a normal Olympics, maybe another one. That should be perfect.
From the BBC World Service, this is the warm-up track.
I'm Ed Harry. Alongside me is Adi Adedoyin, and our guest today is Mackenzie Little, world and Commonwealth medalist in the women's javelin.
I know there were strict protocols in Australia. Had you been working and treating people back in Australia before going to the Olympics?
Yeah,
There's a weirdness about all that, isn't it?
I know. Well, we actually only had, I think, so I was a medical student at the time, but we did do hospital placements. We only actually had a few weeks off in the height of COVID, and then we were back on the wards because, you know, you can't stop going to the hospital to treat people because of COVID. And so that was a brilliant normalcy that I had in my routine that a lot of people didn't have during COVID. My coach also had set up kind of a personal gym at the time, so we had access to our regular training facilities. I was going to work regularly when everyone else was cooped up at home. So I think I did have a perfect prep for that Olympics. And I wouldn't have made the team if it was in 2020, actually. In hindsight, I was kind of, as I talked about, reeling from the post-college transition, changing coaches, wasn't started med school yet, didn't have that routine. I think, yeah, I was in a much better place 2021.
Because of what you were studying, were there friends on the Australian team who were like, Mackenzie, it's going to be okay, isn't it? Are these protocols the right protocols, or are we going to get ill? Are we going to be able to compete? Were you suddenly...
I don't know. I probably would not want to get involved or say anything controversial. But I do think it's interesting. I am interested hearing the team doctors talk about protocols. I'm interested when people get injuries and looking over the shoulder at their scans. So, you know, there's some parts that are interesting. But, you know, I don't actually want to do orthopedics or sports medicine. And I wonder whether that's just come from being an athlete who complains to sports doctors and physios about these injuries from overuse and highly specific high-intensity movements that you should just stop doing in order to stop the pain. So, you know, because the first principle of any kind of medicine would be remove the trigger. Whatever's hurting you, stop doing that. Whereas when you speak to athletes, they'll go, actually, but I want to keep doing that at high intensity every day for the next 3 years. And so I imagine that we're difficult patients, and so perhaps that's what pushed me away from that.
And in terms of you mingling with other athletes, do many people know about like this other side of you? Because I always wonder whether people are like, my hamstring, could you...
Well, I don't. I think some people know, my friends know, and I mean, my competitors know. But, you know, there's rarely a time where someone will come to me for something like that. I mean, there's many people better than me in terms of, you know, those kind of anatomical things. But yeah, sometimes it comes in handy. I've got a few medications up my sleeve if necessary, and I can probably give you a very general idea if something happens, whether you should probably go see someone about that or not. So yes.
But you just stay out of it.
Yeah. Best to just kind of, well, it's kind of nice to be able to switch that part of me off for a period and switch it back on. So
I get the impression, obviously, that you're very passionate about your career in medicine. What, in terms of your career as an athlete, what is it about the sacrifices that you have to make? What you were saying, the lack of sleep, late to training because you're busy, can't go out and hang out because you're busy. Combining these two careers, what is it that gives you so much joy about being an athlete?
Well, I mean, I'm very lucky. I mean, and I should find joy outside of this, but we're sitting in Oslo in a cafe on a Wednesday. That's pretty cool. So I've gotten so many opportunities through athletics that I wouldn't have otherwise. But I think an important part of it is to make sure I'm finding kind of joy in the everyday. And sometimes it's really hard because, you know, I would love to go for morning beach swims and join run clubs and do much more Pilates and hang out with my friends doing those things. But, you know, we've got quite specific javelin things that we need to do. But I think there are lots of sacrifices, but I guess the way that I see it is that on a daily basis, I get kind of emotional, social, and physical benefits from training. And I mean, then the exhilaration and thrill of competing is just really cool, especially, I mean, javelin's a cool event that I think if you ask javelin throwers, they'll say it's a really good one. It's this perfect mixture of track and field and it's, you know, whatever. I do think that when you throw a nice one, it feels really good. But, you know, there's highs and lows. And I think, like, I've had some really, really fun highs. And now this is such a big part of my identity and I really like it. But, you know, there's times that are really hard and you feel lonely and you're putting in the hard yards and you don't see the results. And I think, I mean, the goal is just to finish on a high at some point. But I've already gotten as much out of athletics as I could ever ask for. This is pretty unreal to get to this level. There's such a small percentage of people that get to travel the circuit and live this life and have it be financially feasible, have it, you know, all those things. So I'm actually really lucky. So I'm just got to keep doing it as long as they let me. As long as they invite me back to these, I'll be here.
You mentioned the World Youths when we had the World Under-18s. You won that. You won a gold medal really early on. The Commonwealth silver, the World Championship outdoor senior bronze medal. What's the coolest thing that's happened to you as a result of that? Like, I guess the way your hometown may have celebrated you or things people have done for you to make you feel like, oh, wow, fame, fortune, glory.
Oh, I mean, it's hard to point to a particular spot because, you know, there's not as much fame, fortune, glory as it might look like or something, but it's it's your family, the ones who bring you down to earth, and straight after you've done something really cool, they go, you know, oh, well, I can beat you at Monopoly and whatever. I think that's pretty special too, but I think I would really like to go back to winning some world medals. That was a great feeling. Yeah. I just think being in the same room as some of those like really iconic athletes and having them, you know, recognize you and you see the hard work that everyone's put in and you go, you know, wow, like we're doing this and it's really cool. And yeah, I just think it's brilliant to see some of the people that I've grown up with, like you know, Nicola Olisagas, for example. You know, we've been competing against each other and I've known her for years and years and years, and then newer friends like, you know, I think Femke Bol is my absolute girl crush favourite athlete. I think she's wonderful. And I just, the moments where you get to revel in this world of being an athlete and yeah, I think it's just cool. There's a lot about it.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about when you throw well, the joy that it brings you. We spoke to Kelsey B. Barber on one of our podcasts, and she talked about when you throw well, the feeling. She said, the way she described it was, she said, it's not so much moving the javelin, but it's how you move around it. That's how she gets the distance. Anderson Peters, we spoke to, he said he gets a tingling feeling in his fingers and he knows it's a big one. What about you? How do you know?
Because it's easy. It doesn't hurt. It's just kind of like there's not the cranking, clacking, kind of muscling it. It just is light and flicks out, and it's just kind of gone before you've thought about it. And then you just see this tiny little dot in the air that's the javelin that's gone perfectly through the point. So yeah, I think a lot of people would say that the best ones feel easy. I'm not very good at gauging distances though, really. Like Matt Denny will throw it and he'll go, you know, that's, you know, 68, 52, and I'll throw it and very little idea besides the fact, I felt good. So I don't know, just easy.
I think it's tradition that I almost have to like play a game of javelin bingo here, and I have to use the phrase, is it like a golf swing?
I don't play that much golf.
See, I don't play golf either, so I don't know. People go, oh yes, like a golf swing. Goldie says, a few others, and I'm like, Steve Backley says that to us, like, I don't know what that feels like.
My friends are getting into golf at the moment though, so that's another sacrifices I'm having to make, not playing golf. There's plenty to do after javelin. There's lots
You can
to
answer
go.
that question then.
Yeah.
And despite all the success you've had competing at this high level, is when you go to training, is it still feel like a school day where I'm still learning new things, I'm still developing?
Oh yeah, I think like I have to work quite hard then to better myself, and kind of every year, especially with those years where the fact that last year I threw a personal best and it was on the back of several years of personal bests, I kind of have to now be as good as myself last year. Like that's actually now quite stressful. I've got to get to training and go, I got to do this, and sometimes I think, will I ever do that again? But Angus has so far every year gotten me to do that again and more, so that's what we just have to do. We've got a little bit more time this year, so we'll just see.
I guess one of the legacies of the pandemic was also like a real concertina and scrunching together of all the majors. So pretty much year on year, especially as a Commonwealth athlete as well, there's been something. You mentioned you were disappointed about how it went in Paris, but the fact that now you've got Tokyo again, does that mean, I can get right back to it? I'm not aiming to wait a year or 2 years or whatever it might be.
I think so. It did take a while after Paris to be raring to go again, because I think everyone probably reacts differently to disappointments, and for me, I did lots of training and lots of cross training and things, but it took me a while to get back into the specifics, which is perfect because we've got time before September. But yeah, I'm really glad because I just want to get back at it. I know that I had more to give and I would like to give it. So yeah, we haven't had an off year in years, and so 2026 will actually be interesting without a major necessarily for me. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to having this really big comp coming up, and yeah, I think it will be very interesting to see. I think it's a relatively open field in the women's javelin, despite the dominance of Haruka over the last few years, but and some of the really impressive juniors coming up, so it's really fun, and we've all become pretty good friends actually. I do think that we're one of the event groups that has a better dynamic and good relationships, and I'm excited to see everyone. It's going to be great. It's going to be a party in Tokyo.
Yeah, and as far as Tokyo is concerned, going back to a stadium where you will have a crowd this time, how are you feeling about that?
Great, love a crowd. That's the spicy competition energy that I'm looking for, because now that I don't get so nervous and perhaps I get more the feeling that I want to meet expectations rather than let's just see what I can do. I want to feel nervous, and a big crowd helps you feel a bit nervous.
A quick question about when you say you feel nervous. Did you? Because you've got this career in medicine, which you're working very hard at, and I know you did very well at the collegiate level as well. Did you ever have imposter syndrome?
Oh yeah,
as an athlete?
Oh yes, absolutely. I remember coming into my first year in college, and I think my PB at the time would have won the NCAAs the year before, and so I kind of came in with really high expectations and didn't just immediately excel straight away, and I kind of just would picture people seeing my results back home thinking, why has she done that? Why is she there? And in that situation, you're getting scholarship money. There's some stress with that as well, feeling like you need to prove your worth. So I think I've felt imposter syndrome a lot, and I still feel it because I worry what people think, that I'm not as dedicated to athletics or as I haven't done the same amount of work, or I haven't sacrificed as much as other people. I still worry that people might think that, but you can't focus on those things too much, and I'm just in my own lane doing my own thing, and I've proven that this can work, and I can fly into Lausanne and a few hours later throw a personal best and win my first Diamond League. That can happen. So you just never know. And I plan to just keep doing it as long as I can. I imagine there'll be a point where it comes to a head. But, you know, people thought that would be college. They thought it would be med school. They thought it would be when I started full-time work. So I'm just pushing it back as much as I can.
I mean, it's a massively positive thing. Anyone listening to this and wherever they are in their lives, that you don't just have to be one thing. You don't just have to follow one dream. You don't have to. You say you're sort of staying in your lane as an athlete, but you're also in a completely different lane over there doing something else at the same time. That's a message that really it's great for anybody to hear.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of that, I do feel imposter syndrome at work all the time too. And I worry, I mean, probably more so because you get put in situations where, you know, patients are looking to you for answers and you think, gosh, I'm not the best person to answer this question. You know, and I worry that my fellow doctors, you know, might think I'm an airhead athlete or something like that. Like, you know, there's so many things that could limit you or worry you or, you know, that could change how you present yourself. But yeah, I think I just have gotten a bit better at knowing that, you know, I'm doing my best and I have a right to be in these spaces. And I'm just, all I can guarantee is that I'm nice to people. You know, don't lie, don't be lazy. That's all you can really do in medicine and in sport. So that's what I'm trying to do.
I mean, I want to one more on this because I want to talk to you about 2026 that you mentioned in a sec. But it is very interesting that. But with my sister-in-law, she's living the dream in medicine.
Yeah.
You're living that dream.
Yeah.
But you also live in another dream here. It's incredible because we find one, but you found two, and you can manage it. I mean, that takes some doing mentally.
Well, I mean, sometimes I can't manage it, and I think you'll speak to my coach, and you know, I'll admit there are times where it's not been optimal, and so I mean, yes, I guess I'm managing it, but nothing's that black and white, is it? And so, you know, for example, I've been really lucky to avoid any major injuries requiring surgery in my career. Generally, I've been pretty lucky with that, and maybe that's because I've been working so much I don't really have time to overtrain. So, you know, there's so many variables, and I mean that's how I approach competing too. Like I'm quite jet lagged at the moment. I will be jet lagged at the competition, but I've trained when I'm really tired and exhausted and have an exam the next day at home. So I just think, you know, there are so many variables. At least I don't have those ones affecting me right now. And so actually I'm probably in better shape than I usually would be. So yeah, I think like I would say that I don't always cope, but I'm doing my best, and that's probably enough.
We've been talking about the medals, and I guess the first major senior one was the silver at the Commonwealth Games in 2022. And I think we've spoken to athletes from the Caribbean, from New Zealand, from Canada, all about the Commonwealth Games. But I get the impression that if you're an Australian or if you're British, they mean a great deal. Like an extra Olympics. It's kind of how I think of it. I mean, there was a moment where we wondered if the 2022 Commonwealth Games was the very last one. I mean, what could we have lost if it had gone then?
I mean, I had a fabulous experience at the Commonwealth Games, and historically in Australia, if you speak to Australians, they will say that, you know, oh, you're an athlete. Oh, have you gone to the Olympics or Commonwealth Games? And so in at least the psyche of Australians, it certainly has a higher tier than a World Championships or something like that, which is, I'm not sure where that's come from, but there's certainly been illustrious history in the Commonwealth Games. It's been really big. It's been really exciting. I think it's been tricky in the last few years, and I think costs have affected it. And, you know, unfortunately, the 2026 Olympics that was going to be in Australia, was something happened, and you know, it will be in the UK, but in this kind of diminished form. I think it would be a real shame if it disappeared a little bit. I mean, it's such a fabulous experience, as you said. It's my first kind of big medal, and I think it would be a shame. But you know, the World Championships are clearly a bigger competition in terms of depth of fields, and you know, I think I would even argue the NCAA's is perhaps a higher standard than Commonwealth Games in most events. But it's just, you know, that big multi-sport team environment you can't really replicate. The closest would be World Uni Games. I kind of went twice. It was fabulous. but they're rare. They're few and far between, getting to be in these big athlete villages, and I don't know. Commonwealth Games is wonderful. So it will be sad if it's kind of changed like that.
Do you get to go to next year's, or are you reaching a point where the medical studies mean you're going to have to say no to some stuff as you kind of get yourself fully qualified?
Oh, I don't know. Because, I don't know exactly what it'll look like for work next year. I don't know exactly what it'll look like for training next year. So I actually don't know. But I can roll with that, I can roll with just seeing how it goes. I don't even know. Maybe I probably won't know when things come to a head, and I should probably decide. I'm sure I'll delay that decision more than I should. But, so as far as next year goes, we'll just send it.
With Laura Muir from the UK, obviously the middle and long distance runner, it was a veterinary studies, and so you got, where's Laura Muir? Oh, she's not here. And then you kind of look in the paper, and there she is with a dog with a leg in a splint, because she was qualifying as a veterinary doctor.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a few things that I've been grateful for, and I do think affect my ability to do both, that I've spoken to a few athletes about. If I was doing rowing, for example, a team sport where you have to be there with others in the boat at a certain time, I couldn't do it. I couldn't train the way I do. Also, if I was a long distance runner, actually, who needed miles on the track and who needed to go to altitude and train at altitude for several weeks to get them, to be able to compete, I probably wouldn't be able to do that either. So just by the very nature of javelin being a technical power event where I can do this, quality over quantity thing, and it doesn't necessitate time with other people, it's relatively flexible. I don't need to travel with pole vaults around and find a specific pole vault pit. I can, do a ball session in a park with a brick wall if I need to. That kind of makes it possible. I do, everyone's situation is very unique, but javelin does allow me to have a bit more flexibility. I think that is different from, especially a long distance runner. Yeah.
And I love the fact that you are so optimistic and positive about life, and I guess a risk taker, in that you're doing all these things. So when it comes to javelin, when it comes to competition, you talk about jet lag, fatigue, how do you switch that off? And it's like, we're here now, and for the next, whatever it is, hour and a half, I'm doing this. This doesn't exist.
Just doing it. Well, I think just because I'm, because what other option do you have? I think, I've set, and I guess what I try to do is I just set myself up in a position to just do things and for them to just happen. So especially after work when I'm exhausted, I just want to go home. Once I've put my clothes on and I've driven myself to training, may as well do my warm-up, may as well try and make it a decent session. And so if you just put yourself in situations, like I've put myself here in Oslo, and yes, I'm jet lagged, and yes, but what option should I have to kind of mope around and, say, oh, well, I'm tired? But, there's no point to that. And I do have agency to change that. If I wanted to come to Oslo a week in advance,
the U.S. Defence Secretary has insisted that
take break breaks, and I could.
But
I think I just put myself in this position where I just got to do it, and that's it. So I try to. It works sometimes. It doesn't work other times. And that's it.
There's no time to dwell, definitely. And maybe
no.
I think that's where mentally people can struggle sometimes, because they have got too much time to replay and overanalyze.
Yes, and that's the thing that I think probably got me when I was full-time athlete, thinking about, I should probably be doing my recovery now, and actually should I stay off my feet or be on my feet more, or I've got time, I'll just do a bunch of extra reps, or I should maybe focus on my diet a bit more. I learned to just forget the small stuff and roll with the punches a little bit more. Out of necessity, but then I think it's an advantage. So I do think I cope well when it's raining. I do think I cope well when I lost my luggage and I don't have my uniform and I don't have my balls and I don't have my javelins, and I do think that I have an advantage there, because I haven't been able to form these really strict routines looking at my whoop to see what my recovery score is, to see how I'm feeling. Doesn't matter how I'm feeling, just gotta go. So that's maybe an advantage, I think, to work when you need to show up and do your job. And at work I would love to take a bathroom break or go eat food or do something else, and sometimes you just can't, and so that's just the way it is. And for athletics, sometimes you just gotta do it. and that's it.
And of course, this is building up to the Tokyo World Championships, and as you alluded to earlier, it feels very open, and this just comes down to on the day. What happens on the day?
Yeah. I think you only need one. I've used that a few times. I used to kind of be I'd just throw one good one on the first throw and then just be rubbish. And then I've had seasons where I've kind of built throughout the competition. At the moment, I'm pretty inconsistent, actually. I think it's been a little bit inconsistent with training. There's a few things I need to work on. But you don't forget how to do your event now. Like I'm not that old, but I've been doing this for a while, and you don't forget your technique necessarily of the big picture stuff. So I just think it depends who kind of puts it together and gets you can't throw too hard. People say in javelin you aim for about like 80% kind of thing, but light, whippy, flexible, explosive. I think it will be a good competition. There's a few people who can, javelin in itself, I think, is one of the more like dynamic, and I've in competitions this season and others, I've thrown 10 meters different, one throw to another, and that can happen. So hopefully it's 10 meters plus in Tokyo. But javelin is very interesting in that way. So I don't know who's going to be really the ones to beat necessarily. I think, Alina Tsenko's done fabulously in the Diamond League so far. The world best is that young Adriana Villalgos. And then, the dominant figure Haruka is always able to pull something out from anywhere. So I like watching. I'm interested to see. And then if I just show up and put yourself in the mix, you never know. But I think I'd like to win one.
Oh, yeah.
At some point.
We'd also like to win one, yeah.
Yeah. So, I can be like blasé and chatty and enjoy the thing, but I'd love to kick some butt.
Before we go, it's been fantastic talking to you, but we are the Warm-Up Track podcast, so what do you listen to get ready to compete? What gets you in the mood?
From college, this is where it started, but I've got a Jason Derulo Jav Hype playlist. That's it. So a little bit of kind of Jason Derulo is exactly what is apparently the right zone to be in. Yeah.
Well, Michaela, it's been fascinating talking to you.
Thanks.
And thank you.
Klokken 19.
Tonight I can report to the
I kveld
world.
kan jeg meddele at angrepene var en spektakulær suksess.
Military success. Iran's key
Nøkkelanleggene i Irans atomprogram er fullstendig utslettet.
Midtøsten kastet ut i total usikkerhet. Verden følger nå nøye med. Hva kommer Iran til å gjøre?
God kveld og velkommen til Dagsrevyen, hvor vår hovedsak er USAs angrep mot Iran.
Ja, USA har nå involvert seg direkte i krigen da de i natt angrep 3 atomanlegg i Iran. Iran sier angrepet vil få evigvarende konsekvenser.
Det var 7 slike B-2 bombefly som gjennomførte angrepet mot 2 av målene i Iran. De fløy i 18 timer fra basen i USA. Det krevde en rekke etterfyllinger av drivstoff i luften. Fra klokken 0:40 norsk tid i natt begynte de å slippe totalt 14 slike gigantbomber som kan trenge dypt ned i bakken. Satellittbildene fra ett av stedene viser som forventet ikke så mye, 6 hull i bakken. Det er ikke mulig ut fra dette å si at angrepet var vellykket, men amerikanerne er sikre.
I kveld kan jeg melde at angrepene var en spektakulær militær suksess.
Military success.
Iranerne kom raskt med sitt verbale svar.
Dette er et rystende, alvorlig brudd.
An unprecedented violation of the
Og de grunnleggende prinsippene i FN-pakten og folkeretten.
and international law.
Og så kom det iranske militære svaret, ikke rettet mot USA, men mot mål i Israel. Flere av de ballistiske missilene traff bakken. Mange bolighus ble rammet, og mange mennesker skal ha blitt skadet. Dette har Israel sett før, og den israelske lederen takket USA for deres innsats i natt.
President Trump en sterk leder for den frie verden. En stor venn av Israel, en venn uten sidestykke. På vegne av Israels borgere og hele det jødiske folk, takker jeg ham av hele mitt hjerte.
Ja, dette atomanleggene USA angrep i natt. Fordo, Natanz og Isfahan. De to første ble angrepet med bombefly, og det siste med kryssmissiler. Ved Fordo og Natanz ligger store deler av atomanlegget langt under bakken, og skal anlegget bombes fra lufta, vil det være behov for en bombe som kan trenge gjennom store mengder fjell og betong. Det her USA kommer inn. Slike bomber det bare de som har tilgang til. GBU 57. Bombene svært store og tunge, og kan trenge seg dypt ned i bakken. Men det trengs også fly som kan løfte og slippe disse bombene. Amerikanske B-2-flyet det eneste bombeflyet som kan gjøre det. Og den bomben utviklet spesielt for akkurat det flyet. I natt skjedde det. USA angrep Iran.
Vi skal til vår Midtøsten-korrespondent Yama Olasmal i Tel Aviv. Hvor svekket Iran nå?
Det klart etter 10 dager med omfattende israelske angrep dypt inne i Iran, hvor de har tatt ut toppgeneralene deres, etterretningssjefer, militære anlegg, flyplasser, rakettutskytningsramper, atomanlegg ikke minst. USA har nå gått inn og ødelagt deler av de 3 store anleggene deres, så regimet svekket, det det ingen tvil om, men det langt fra slått. Regimet fortsatt i stand til å ramme både Israel og amerikanske baser som ligger rett utenfor kysten til Iran, og det det store spørsmålet alle stiller seg nå. Hvordan kommer Iran til å respondere på angrepet fra USA?
Så kan man også spørre seg, hvordan havnet vi i denne situasjonen med amerikanske angrep mot iranske atomanlegg?
For 11 dager siden så var USA og Iran i direkte samtaler om landets omstridte atomprogram. Man prøvde å komme til en enighet om hvordan Iran ikke skulle få lov til å utvikle atomvåpen. Og rett før det siste møtet mellom USA og Iran så gikk Benjamin Netanyahu til angrep på Iran. Han bombet landet omfattende. Dermed brøt de samtalene sammen, og siden har vi hatt 10 dager med kamper mellom Iran og Israel. Nå har USA også kastet seg inn i den kampen på Israels side. Frem til nylig så sa amerikansk etterretning at det ikke fantes bevis for at Iran var i ferd med å utvikle atomvåpen i løpet av noen måneder, slik Benjamin Netanyahu har brukt som argument for å gå løs på Iran. Men nå sier Trump at jo, det stemmer, Iran var i ferd med å utvikle disse våpnene, og det kan vi ikke tillate, og derfor går vi løs på atomanleggene deres. Så vi har gått fra å prate med iranerne for 11 dager siden til full krig mellom Iran på den ene siden og USA og Israel på den andre.
Nå har Irans nasjonalforsamling vedtatt å stenge det viktige Hormuzstredet, men den endelige beslutningen må tas av Irans øverste nasjonale sikkerhetsråd. Hvilke konsekvenser vil en slik stenging få?
Iran har alltid truet med dette. De har sagt at hvis våre atomanlegg blir rammet, dette hadde sagt i årevis, så vil de ramme Hormuzstredet. Dette et av verdens mest strategiske stred som går rett utenfor Irans kyst. Det har en bredde på rundt 30 kilometer, og store deler av verdens olje- og gassforsyninger flyter gjennom dette stredet ombord oljetankere. 20% av verdens oljeforsyninger går gjennom dette stredet, en femtedel. Store deler av olje og gassen som Kina trenger går gjennom dette stredet, og store deler av det EU trenger går gjennom dette stredet. Så dette et svært strategisk stred. Hvis Iran velger å stenge dette stredet eller sabotere og angripe det, så vil det få globale ringvirkninger. Oljeprisen kommer sannsynligvis til å skyte i været, og Kina, stormakten Kina, må se seg etter andre steder å skaffe olje og gass. Det må også EU.
Vi skal se at Iran svarte på de amerikanske angrepene med nye angrep mot Israel i dag tidlig. Jamma, her så vi hvordan du og din fotograf måtte komme der i dekning tidligere i dag. Hvordan opplever dere å være i Tel Aviv nå?
Det en by og et land I full beredskap. Her holder de fleste pusten I påvente av hva Iran kommer til å gjøre. Iran pleier å angripe nattestid, så vi går en natt I møte hvor de fleste nervøse for hva som kommer til å skje. Styrkene til Israel I høy beredskap, amerikanerne I høy beredskap for å beskytte Israel, for man venter at Iran kommer til å slå hardt tilbake, I hvert fall mot Israel, om de ikke gjør det mot amerikanske baser. Israelere vi har snakket med sier at de trygge på at staten og styrkene deres vil beskytte dem mot iranske missiler. De fleste ganske selvsikre I denne kampen, og vi har vært ute på gatene for å snakke med israelere, og de aller fleste vi snakket med støtter denne krigen mot Iran, og sier at vi stoler på at den informasjonen Netanyahu har gitt stemmer at Iran var I ferd med å utvikle atomvåpen, og det kan ikke Israel gå med på.
The fact that Trump bombed the 3 nuclear sites in Iran.
Det at Trump bombet de 3 atomanleggene en stor glede for oss. Vi veldig fornøyde. Det sant? Ja, det var skikkelig moro. Jeg håper at angrepsbeslutningen ble tatt av den profesjonelle delen av hæren, og ikke av politikerne.
The army and not the political part of it. Iran
har I mange tiår truet med å ødelegge Israel.
To destroy Israel, and they've never backed down.
De har aldri gitt opp å bygge atomvåpen, uansett hvor mange samtaler som har vært. Dette forebyggende angrepet var nødvendig.
Ja, også Marit Befring, du I Nes Seona, et av stedene som ble rammet av angrep I dag. Hva skjedde der?
Ja, da Iran sendte missiler mot Israel, så var de fleste I dette nabolaget I bomberom, og takk og pris for det. Da de kom opp igjen, så de dette. En rekke hus altså regelrett lagt I ruiner. Her de såpass skadet at det bestemt at de må bli revet. Likevel så har flere av de som bor her sagt til oss at de fortsatt støtter krigføringen I Iran. På rundt 10 steder I Israel så skal altså Israel ha penetrert det avanserte missilforsvarssystemet til Israel, og 86 israelere skadet, 4 av de alvorlig ifølge den israelske redningstjenesten.
Du var så vidt inne på det. Hva tenker israelere om at USA nå har involvert seg I krigen mot Iran?
Reaksjonen fra israelere har vært en blanding av en lettelse, men også en bekymring. Fordi de glade for at USA har gått inn militært på deres side for å ødelegge atomanlegg som de mener brukt til å utvikle atomvåpen, at uran skal brukes til det. Men samtidig så de urolige for hvordan Iran kommer til å reagere nå. Ikke bare med angrep mot amerikanske baser og Israel, men de frykter også for livene til israelere ute I verden, at det kan bli flere terrorangrep. Så det altså en blanding av nervøsitet, men også at dette var nødvendig fra israelerne her.
Da sier vi takk til deg også, Marit Befring.
Etter de amerikanske angrepene holdt USAs forsvarsminister Pete Hegseth en pressekonferanse sammen med landets forsvarssjef I Pentagon. Amerikansk avskrekking tilbake, sa Hegseth, som advarte Iran mot å svare.
Operasjonen president Trump planla var djerv og genial. Vi viser verden at USA har gjenopptatt avskrekking som metode. Når presidenten åpner munnen, bør verden lytte. Og USAs styrker kan underbygge det. Vi har de mektigste styrkene I verden noensinne. Ikke noe annet land kunne gjennomført operasjonen. Forsvarsstabssjefen vil beskrive. Ikke I nærheten, en gang.
USA-korrespondent Anders Segård utenfor Det hvite hus. Hegseth sa også at angrepet knuste Irans atomprogram, men påstanden ikke verifisert. Hva vet man om hvor mye skade det amerikanske angrepet har gjort?
Det jo forskjell på hva militæret sier og det som kommer fra president Trump. Utryddelse, sa Trump, mens forsvarssjefen mer forsiktig og sier at det har blitt alvorlige ødeleggelser, men at det for tidlig å si noe om detaljene her. President Trump han gambler på at Iran gir etter, kommer til forhandlingsbordet, selv om kunnskapen om atomprogrammet nå ikke bombet bort.
Hvor viktig var det for Trump-administrasjonen å gjennomføre dette angrepet nå?
Det åpnet seg et vindu, mener den fløyen I partiet som ivret for et angrep da Israel begynte å bombe Iran og ta kontroll over luftrommet. President Trump han gikk imot sin egen etterretning her, som mente at Iran ikke var I ferd med å bygge et atomvåpen, men at de anriket uran raskere og I et høyere tempo og I høyere grad enn det som brukes til fredelige formål.
Så ifølge CBS trusselnivået I USA økt etter angrepene mot Iran, og USA har også startet evakuering av amerikanske borgere fra Libanon. Hvordan skal man tolke dette?
Ja, det viser at det stor usikkerhet her om hvordan Iran og iransk støttet milits kommer til å svare på dette angrepet. Visepresident Vance han nekter for at USA I krig med Iran, men sier at de kjemper mot Irans atomprogram. Utenriksminister Marco Rubio hevder at verden I dag et tryggere og mer stabilt sted enn for 24 timer siden, men også utenfor Det hvite huset her så sikkerhetsgjerdene dyttet enda lenger bort fra inngangen.
Helt kort til slutt, Anders. Hvordan reagerer amerikanere på disse angrepene?
I kongressen så det demokrater og også en håndfull republikanere som mener at dette angrepet var ulovlig, at det bare kongressen som kan kunne godkjenne et militært angrep, men det støtte for at Iran ikke skal ha et atomprogram.
Takk skal du ha.
Ja, med oss I studio, utenriksminister Espen Barth Eide. Det støtte, sier Anders Tvegård blant amerikanere, men det et slag I ansiktet for de som jobber nå hardt for en diplomatisk løsning dette angrepet I natt?
Det absolutt beklagelig at de forsøkene på å få I gang forhandlinger fram mot en ny atomavtale Iran ikke førte fram. Det har vært omfattende aktivitet både før disse angrepene, altså før de israelske angrepene for 9 dager siden, men faktisk også etter dem. Fordi USA og Iran har jo hatt en serie samtaler. De har hatt 5 møter, skulle hatt et 6. for noen få dager siden, som da ble avlyst etter at Israel angrep. Og selv etter det vet vi at det har vært både direkte og indirekte kontakt, men likevel så gikk altså USA til det skrittet å gå inn I krigen, bombe disse anleggene, og nå ser det ganske mørkt ut. Men det jo ikke slik at det ikke lenger behov for en avtale, for det grenser for hva man kan få til med rent militære virkemidler. Til slutt tror jeg de fleste skjønner at man trenger en avtale, og det kommer til å fortsette å ivre for, og så må alle parter respektere folkeretten også her.
Hvorfor tror du ikke USA klarte å vente til en diplomatisk løsning var på ordet?
Det virker jo som det statsminister Netanyahu og Israel gjorde skapte en situasjon hvor de ble mer og mer trukket inn. I forkant av dette så hadde jo USA advart Israel mot å angrepe nå. Jeg var I USA for få dager siden. Jeg merket jo hvordan denne debatten gikk ganske høylytt mellom ulike deler av den amerikanske administrasjonen. Der var det definitivt flere syn, men da ser det ut til at de som mener at nå måtte man bruke anledningen, nå hadde Israel på mange måter myket opp det iranske forsvaret, at da var det viktig å slå til. Men det utrolig viktig å si at det grunnproblemet her jo at Iran prøver å få seg atomvåpen. Vi tror heller ikke de var rett rundt hjørnet, men det et alvorlig problem om Iran skulle få atomvåpen. Men løsningen på det må være diplomatisk gjennom avtaler, og avtaler som kan verifiseres, for ellers så får man en situasjon hvor man kanskje må gå inn og bombe om og om igjen, fordi kunnskapen og en del av dette utstyret sikkert fortsatt tilgjengelig. For eksempel det grunn til å tro at mye av det anrikende materialet på andre steder enn de som bombet nå, for Iran var jo også forberedt på at dette angrepet kunne komme.
Kort til slutt, Iran og deres atomprogram en eksistensiell trussel?
Altså, hvis Iran fikk atomvåpen, så det et alvorlig brudd på ikke-spredningsavtalen, som jo faktisk har holdt antallet stater med atomvåpen nede. Men det jo en avtale som også gir stater rett til sivil bruk av atomvåpen. Det viktig at man respekterer helheten I den avtalen, og at alt som skjer for å fremme det prinsippet skjer I tråd med folkeretten, for ellers så kan man få uønskede konsekvenser, og jeg jo redd for at selv om vi og alle andre nå maner til deeskalering, så kan dette ha konsekvenser langt utover regionen selv, som vi også hørte I disse reportasjene. Så dette en veldig alvorlig situasjon som vi nå har kommet inn I.
Så vi takk til deg, Espen Barth Eide. Storbritannias statsminister Keir Starmer viser støtte til USA etter at stormakten involverte seg I krigen mellom Israel og Iran. De fleste statsledere I Europa har så langt latt være å kommentere USAs bombing.
Det høynet sikkerhetsnivå I Haag etter USAs bombing av Iran 2 dager før NATO-møtet starter. Hele byen I ferd med å omgjøres til en festning. Haag også hjembyen til NATO-sjef Mark Rutte, som så langt I dag har vært helt taus. Men den britiske statsministeren sier USA bombet for å redusere trusselen.
My focus is on de-escalating.
Jeg opptatt av avspenning. Jeg enig I at det fare for opptrapping.
That's a risk to the region.
Det en fare både I og utenfor regionen. Derfor har vi konsentrert oss om å få folk tilbake til forhandlingsbordet.
I Haag deltok blant annet eksil-iranere I det som var ment som en anti-NATO-demonstrasjon for å protestere